And finally, ladies and gentlemen, we get to Paramecia. Okay. Paramecia, I'll be honest with you, it seems like when Oda was coming up with the different types of devil fruits, he came up with Logia, like, oh, okay, that seems like a cool idea for a superpower in a manga, you know, characters that can turn into fire, or lightning, or mud, or whatever. And then he came up with zones, like, oh, okay, cool, now we have people that can turn into animals. But then he was just like, what if I come up with some other random... what if I just want to come up with just random superpowers that have nothing to do with the first two categories? Fuck it, I'll just make a third category that just includes any other batshit idea, good or bad, just goes in this category so we can keep this diverse. And that's how you end up with the Paramecia class, which is also the class of Devil Fruit that has the most users. 75 current canon users of Paramecia fruits in the One Piece story. So obviously there's a lot of stuff to cover here. Now, unlike the other two groups, I also just can't broadly explain, like, this is how all Paramecia fruits work, because they all work in different ways. And some of them actually, conversely, work in very similar ways, to the point where you question why they're even different fruits. Like, Doflamingo's string fruit. Okay, what does that do? Well, it's a Paramecia that allows him to manipulate string, and he can, you know, shoot strings and stitch things together and patch up his organs and create string clones and shit like that. Pretty badass fruit. But then we get to Leo's Stitch fruit, which is also a Paramecia, and I'm like, okay, well, what does that do? Well, it allows him to manipulate strings to stitch things together and pull them apart, and okay, I mean, it's not as diverse as the Ito Itonomi, but it's still... It's like, what exactly makes them different? I guess just ability, or... I guess Leo's fruit is specifically catered to just stitching items and people to other items or people, rather as Doflamingo's is like the free manipulation of strings. So that's what I mean. Like, there could be some that are really different and some that are very similar. But essentially, there are three categories that all Paramecia fruits fit in more or less. Some of them even fit in more than one. This is not something that's directly, you know, Oda came out and stated, like there's three little subcategories for all Paramecia fruits. It's just looking at how different Paramecia users have their powers and how their powers are executed. We came up with three general ways that you can divide Paramecia fruits. First are the abilities that affect the user's body, actually change the user's body in some way. Such examples with this would be Luffy's Gamu Gamu no Mi, changing his body around to exhibit the traits of rubber, not just his outer body, but also his internal organs, his skeletal structure. I went into all of that when I was explaining Luffy's different gear techniques. His body has actually physically changed to the qualities of rubber. Along with that, we also have Buggy's Bara Bara no Mi, his Chop Chop fruit, which allows to separate his body apart. Even Alvida's Slip fruit, it makes her body super slippery, which I guess also means that she gets wicked fucking hot and her boobs get bigger. Well, actually, no, her boobs might have actually stayed the same size. I'm getting off topic again. But that's one, you know, way to look at it. You know, it's just a devil fruit that actually changes the user's body chemistry around. Then we have the type that allows them to actually summon up substance. Now, this can be confused with Logias quite a bit, because whenever you have Logias that they can turn into their element, like on top of Ace actually turning into fire, he can also summon fire and, like, throw it at his opponents. Now, the difference there is that Paramecias aren't able to change into their element, only summon their element. Now, this is more obvious with certain users than others. Like, for example, I remember there's a lot of people that still confuse Magellan. They think Magellan is a Logia user because it looks like he can actually change his body into poison. No, he's not actually changing his physical form into poison. He's just coating his entire body with a layer of poison, in the sense that he can just, you know, emit poison from his pores or whatever, so he can cover his entire body with it. But he could still get hit. Even after covering his body with poison, Luffy could still, you know, slam into him with Gamu Gamu no Bazooka. It fucked up Luffy's hands, but he still physically hit Magellan. Other examples with this would be Mr. 3, who has the Wax power that can emit wax from his body at any location he wants. Very handy for him, because he can also make it and mold it into different objects, like keys and stuff, so that's pretty cool. But they are actually not changing into his element. The biggest one that still people are confused about to this day, and even I took a while to be like, wait, is it a Logia or is it a Paramecia, is Treble. Fuck Treble. Can I just get that out right out of the gate? Fuck Treble. Okay. So Treble, upon first appearing, had the appearance that he was a Logia, eating the what was it? The Meto Meto no. No, it was the Beta Beta no Mi. You know, I remembered that because I have a beta fish and he is our Dark Lord and he will roll over all of us, so don't piss him off. It's Zeta the Beta. But anyway, yeah. A lot of people thought he was a Logia user, right? Because he's able to control this weird sticky substance from any part of his body and he can fling it at people and stuff like that. Later on, during the battle between Luffy and Law and Doflamingo and Treble, Luffy armament hockeys up his hand and then punches Treble. Now, if this was the case with a normal Logia user, if he just changed his body into this weird gooey substance, then that punch would have actually forced Treble's body into the corporeal form and would have damaged him, you know? Like, you could, like, for instance, let's say Smoker, who's a Logia user, spreads out his body using smoke. Virgo countered that by just, you know, armament hockey upping his hand. Is like, even though you're spreading out your body with smoke, using armament hockey, I can still punch you, and it'll force whatever part of your body that was into the physical form. It'll still damage you. You're just spreading out your range, really, for me to hit you, making a bigger target. But when Luffy did that to Treble, it just punched a hole straight through his sticky, weird, gooey substance. I don't really know I don't want to know what that shit fucking feels like. You ever eat a jackfruit? It doesn't matter. Anyway, yeah, it just made a hole. So that revealed, like, oh shit, is he not a Logia? And later on, when Law, like, sliced him freaking stem to stern with Steerbin, you know, it caused him, you know, to, like, begin to lose consciousness, and it caused all of his, the sticky substance he was covering himself with to disappear, to fall off of him, and it revealed this weird, hunchback, emaciated form. So what Treble was actually doing is that he was coating his entire body with this substance that he was creating, and I guess he could control, just like the same way that Galdino could control the shape of his wax and, like, the form it took, Treble could control, like, the color scheme that his sticky substance created. So he made it seem like this was actually his, like, towering body, when in reality he was this really lanky dude. And what Luffy did, Luffy just didn't punch his body. He punched, you know, the other, you know, 80% of Treble's body that wasn't actually his real body. You know, but yeah, so Treble is in fact a Paramecia user. That's just how that goes. There was also, though, there was another scene, this was what really confused people. There was another scene where Usopp shoots the shuriken at Treble, and it looks like they cut him up. And it's like, well, if he's a Paramecia, then that should have cut his body up. But people have gone and, like, explained, well, maybe Treble sensed them coming with observation, and he could, like, scrunch up. Like, there's really funny fan art of it, like him scrunching up his body to avoid the shuriken. But, you know, I'm going to assume that he is a Paramecia, given from what we've seen, he's a Paramecia. And that Law was also able to cut him with the sword thing. Because I don't think he was using hockey there. I mean, Law was pretty banged up at that point. I don't think he had the ability to use hockey. And plus, that was like his severed arm he was fucking using. Has that ever been shown in the story, by the way, the ability to endow hockey into things that you're not actually physically touching? You know, like, there's a fidget spinner on my desk! Hockey! Hockey up! Yeah, I don't think, the Kuja used their arrows, but they were still connected with their arrows, and then they shot them first. I'm talking about using your hockey on stuff that you can't actually see. I mean, that you can't actually touch, you know? I don't know. Anyway, so that's the types that actually summon a substance that can cover your body, or, you know, you could summon, like Magellan can summon his Hydra, you know, summoning things. You know, also, you apparently have the ability to endow some of your own consciousness into things, too. You know, because it's like, I don't know about you, but when Magellan was summoning that fucking Venom Demon thing, it seemed to have a little bit of a mind of its own. It seemed to be able to swing and react and shit. Maybe Magellan was controlling it like a puppet. In the anime only, and this is why I hesitate to bring this up, but somebody will most definitely bring it up if I don't. In the anime, Magellan was able to create this thing called the Poison Cloud, which it was in the manga too. He used it in the manga as well, but in the anime, he actually added the line that this poisonous cloud is part of me. It lives and breathes. He didn't say that in the manga. It was only in the anime. In the manga, it was just like this big spider poison thing that breathed gas and that caused Luffy to pass out. That was the only thing that it did there. In the anime, he said it was actually part of his own consciousness. So maybe that has something to do with that. I don't know. The last part of Paramecia, and this is the one that we actually haven't seen that many of. We've only seen a few examples of this, but it's Paramecias that have the ability to manipulate the environment around them in some ways. So not summoning a substance, not changing their own body around, but being able to add things to the environment or mess around with that in some way. An example of this would be Blueno's Door no Mi. He was able to actually summon doors and walk through walls and, air door, create a fucking, pocket universe that you could just walk into to avoid any sort of damage, which you would think would be massively fucking useful for not just transport, but also, saving. That's how they survived the destruction of Eni's lobby. Blueno, I guess after Luffy beat the shit out of him, Blueno regained consciousness, used air door, rescued all the CP9 members, and that's how they survived the island getting blown to bits. So that's pretty cool there. But then you get Devil Fruit users that are able to somehow have both categories in some way, that are able to affect their bodies and the environment or summon something. Like Nico Robin, for instance. Nico Robin, at first glance, her Hana no Mi just affects her own body. And, she can sprout, hands from her own body and shit, but she can also sprout her body and other appendages in the environment in some way, affecting it that way. She can summon things. So it's like, okay, that's kind of like both. She can change her own physical body, and she can also, affect the environment. She could summon things. I mean, she could summon a substance or something. In her case, it would be her own limbs, but it's still a substance, and I made a whole video about that kind of stuff there. I really just want to spotlight some really weird devil fruits in this one, because there's some that are really a little bit OP, and then there's some that are really weird. In the OP spectrum, we have Moria's Kage no Mi. So Moria's fruit allows him to literally rip apart shadows from people. Okay, and these are fruits that seem to have like more than one ability, not necessarily connected. But in Moria's case, he takes a giant-ass pair of scissors, which I guess that means he needs to have a pair. No, he doesn't need to have the pair. Well, does he? Because I think he does need to have a pair of scissors or something sharp to, because he rips the shadow out of you, but it's still connected. He has to use a pair of scissors or something to, cut the fucking shadow. So, on top of that, he can either, at that point, absorb the shadow himself and get stronger, or he can throw the shadow into another living person so they can get stronger, or he can take a corpse and throw the shadow in there to give the corpse new life as a zombie. So, bunch of different things you can do with the Kage no Mi. Meanwhile, the person that got the shadow removed from them, they can't go in direct sunlight or they'll die. But if they die, then their shadow, no matter where it is, will also die. So it's like the Kage no Mi. It's one of those things where it's like, if a complete fucking moron ate the fruit, they're not going to get very far. But if somebody rather clever, I'm not saying it's Moria, because he was kind of stupid too, but if someone like Moria, someone that's a little bit smarter than Moria consumed the fruit, they could actually figure out a way to maybe take over the world a little bit if they used it the right way. Here's a problem I had with Moria, okay? If you just want to talk about that, there's actually two issues. One of them is actually a glaring continuity issue where Moria, during the events of Marineford, right? He took the shadows of Marines around him and then threw them into the corpses of dead Marines to create zombie warriors. However, the Marines that he took the shadows from, they can't be in direct sunlight anymore. And Marineford was during the middle of the day. So what should have happened is Moria takes the shadow of a Marine, throws it into a dead Marine, that dead Marine comes back to life, but the person he took the shadow from looks at the sun, oh shit, I have no shadow, he dies, and then the zombie he just brought back should have also died. Whatever. Maybe there was a lot of smoke and fog around Marineford that was necessary, I don't know, but in the anime that wasn't the case. The other problem I have with Moria, okay, so Moria, he took the shadows out of strong fighters on his island, and then he didn't want to deal with the strong fighters when they regained consciousness, so he sent them out to sea, right? However, when you'd think that'd be a stupid thing to do, because when they got sent out to sea, they could end up getting in the sun, and Moria doesn't give them a tutorial on this. He doesn't explain to the people, hey, make sure to not come in direct contact with sunlight. If you do, you will die. He doesn't tell them that. He just, ties them up and sends them off into the ocean. Best case scenario, they'll end up floating around the Florian Triangle, but they'll eventually die, and then the whole point that you created the zombie out of this strong fighter is completely useless, because if they die out there, because they don't know that shadows, without a shadow you'll die and you get hit by sunlight, then everything you just did is pointless. So Moria was a dumb fuck, concluded. But another Paramecia fruit that just seems to have like a bunch of different aspects of it, a bunch of different abilities that don't seem to click together. Sugar's Hobby no Mi. Okay, this one seems like Oda came up with all the wacky abilities for this just to explain the plot of Dressrosa better. Like, oh, just to make it look like Doflamingo is more of a bastard, like, oh, well, Sugar's fruit, okay. Well, it allows you to turn humans into toys. Okay, Hobby no Mi, I get that. You could turn humans into toys. I'm assuming you could turn them into other things. It's just that Sugar, maybe chose to do toys. But okay. On top of that, every single person that individual met, after they get turned into a toy, they forget about that person. So, like, you turn a father of 3 into a toy, the father of 3, they'll be a toy. They'll still be able to remember their family. But their kids will forget about their father, and their wife will forget about her husband. That's how it works. It's a very weird... everybody all over the world. That's the weird thing. Everybody that person has ever met just gets affected by the fruit, even though they're not coming in direct contact with Sugar. That's a weird power. That's really fucking powerful, right? And it really, really hammered in how much of a dick Doflamingo was in Dressrosa, but it seems like they're not really connected. Turning people into toys, wiping people's memories, that doesn't seem to be the same thing. And then, a third aspect of the fruit is that it gives the user eternal youth, or rather, it keeps the user at whatever age they ate the fruit at. So Sugar ate the fruit when she was like 8, so she stays as an 8-year-old. She's actually like 22 years old, and Oda's actually drawn her what she looks like, what she would have looked like if she's like 22. But yeah, that's the weird thing about her fruit. And then even further than that, it allows this weird contract ability where Sugar can like turn somebody into a toy and then issue them orders, and they have to obey her without any digression. They don't have any free will. They're like, you will not reveal yourself, and they can never reveal themselves. That's how it is. You will obey every order by the Doflamingo family. They have to obey every order no matter what. So that's what like 4 random abilities that the Hobby no Mi gives you. Eternal youth, ability to turn things into toys, wiping memories of everybody that person that got turned into a toy ever knew, and able to wipe their minds. Well, not wipe their minds, but control their minds, control their bodies in some way through a contract. So that seems like a really diverse fruit that seems like Oda was tacking stuff onto that just to make the Dressrosa arc make more sense. I don't know. On top of OP fruits, we have the Oppy no Mi. We have Law's fruit, which is referred to by many as the ultimate devil fruit, because it gives the user the ability to perform the ageless surgery, allowing to turn somebody, giving someone eternal youth. Not necessarily immortality, like you'll live forever, but you'll be able to live the rest of your natural life, eternally young, so that you can get all this shit done. And that's like why a lot of people people regard that as the ultimate devil fruit, because if someone like Doflamingo got eternal youth, then he could keep this reign of terror up for forever, and he's a superhuman, so he could live longer than the standard lifespan in One Piece, which is like 140. He could live even longer than that, So yeah, that's what the ageless surgery is. On top of that, Law's Devil Fruit can affect the environment. He could summon his room, and he can move shit around. He can like swap things with other things. He can swap things that aren't even physical. Like he can swap personalities, like body swapping, like he did on Punk Hazard. He could do that kind of stuff. He can remove people's hearts and other organs, but their organs will still be active. So for instance, he can rip out your heart and then keep it in a little like square with him, and then he could walk around with it, but you'll still be fine. Your heart will still be beating and pumping blood. It's just like it's still connected to you. It's just that he has it. But if you squeeze it, you can kill yourself that way. So the Lost Devil Fruit is certainly really powerful, and I love it. And that was probably, if I was gonna pick any devil fruit that currently existed in the One Piece universe, that would be the one I would certainly take, the Oppy no Mi, because you could do so much you could do so much shit with it. It would be hilarious just to mess with people with that ability. And you could heal any illness. Law had that amber lead syndrome, which is apparently a poisoning that was like incurable, and he was able to cure it with his Oppy no Mi. Maybe separating his own body apart. I don't think we've ever seen Law do that. I don't think we've ever seen Law. No, we've seen him take out his own heart, but we've never seen him do anything else with it really. But you would assume maybe he could just take out parts of his body and then remove the poisoning, that way by surgery or something. I don't know. It's certainly that's the kind of fruit where its greatest power lies in the person that eats it if they have some sort of medical knowledge. If they have a lot of medical knowledge, then that fruit will be really fucking useful. If just some random Joe six-pack ate it, then might not be that useful to them. As for the opposite end of the spectrum, fruits that are really stupid, or at least on the surface they look stupid, I don't think you can look any further than Kelly Funk's jacket fruit. So number one, this is a fruit that is unique in the sense that you actually, the user, can't use its abilities at all. You can turn into a jacket, but that's it. You turn into a jacket. As in, you can't move, you can't fight, you can't defend, you're a fucking jacket. Laying on the ground, basically an object. You can still talk, but you can't move. The strength of the jacket fruit relies on somebody else utilizing it. It relies on somebody else putting on the jacket that is you, and so you'll, I believe how it works is the person that puts on the jacket, you'll keep their physical body, like their physical strength, but the person that is the jacket, they'll be able to pilot them like, like they're taking over their body, like possession. But you still have to have somebody willingly put on the jacket. So it's not like, I mean, that would be kind of cool if it was like a possession fruit. Like, you could just aim at somebody and, like, swap bodies with them or, like, take possession of them like the fucking mind transfer jutsu in Naruto. But that's not the case. It's like, yeah, you could take over somebody's body, but they have to put you on willingly first, So, eat the jacket fruit, turn into a jacket, go into a coat check room at a fucking Olive Garden and be like, hey, put me on, man, put me on. Ha ha, I've taken over you, that kind of shit. Kelly Funk used it with his brother, and so Kelly kept his intelligence while keeping his brother's brawn. So it seems like a stupid fruit, but you gotta think about the applications of this. Imagine if it was like, imagine if it's like Shanks ate the jacket fruit, and then he turned into a jacket, and then Kaido put it on. So you have all the intelligence of Shanks with all the physical strength and tank ability of Kaido. That'll never happen in the story, but it gives you a concept of, if you take someone that's really fucking smart and somebody that's really fucking strong, holy shit. That could be one of the most devastating devil fruits ever, but 99% of the time, not going to be all that useful there and actually changing your body into a jacket. You can't really go you can't really do much of that. It would usually result in you getting killed right away, On top of that, I wanted to talk about Devil Fruit Awakenings, which is something I neglected to really bring up in the Zone video. Sorry about that. So Awakenings with Paramecias, because there's so many radically different kinds of Paramecia fruits, that's where it gets fun. That's where it gets interesting, where it's like, you could say with Zone fruits, you could say every awakening in Zone will give you a body very similar to that of the Demon Guards, like it'll give you that kind of power. With Logia, you could be like, oh, well, all Logia fruits allow you to alter the weather or your element on a greater scale or something like that. But then you get to Paramecia, who have all these different, radically different powers across the board, and maybe it's different for each type. Like, for instance, the only awakening that we've seen through Paramecia is Doflamingo. Doflamingo had the Ito Ito no Mi, which allowed him to summon a substance, which would be string. Now, he could make a clone of himself turn into string and stuff like that, but he himself couldn't actually turn into string. So he, summoned the strings. His awakening was allowing him to turn the environment around him into string. Okay, so maybe that's how that works. Maybe when you awaken your Paramecia, you get an access to another part of the Paramecia board. Like, so Doflamingo couldn't really affect the environment all that well. His was like a substance-producing type. But after awakening it, he could control the environment, turning it into String World. That's where I had the idea with Luffy's, whereas Luffy had, his ability actually changed his body. Maybe, he could summon a substance, he could summon rubber, or he can make the world around him rubber, and he can make it Rubber World, I could see that, Luffy, like, bouncing off the fucking walls, like, kind of mimicking, Bellamy's, Spring Fruit ability, like, he could bounce off the walls and do shit like that. That might be kind of ripping off Bellamy. I don't think Luffy would really want to rip off Bellamy. But if we're looking in that case, like, Doflamingo was a substance producer that also gained the ability to manipulate the environment. Maybe Luffy will be a body manipulator user that will get turned into, producing rubber substances. Like, he can just make rubber. and he can make different fucking objects and weapons. Like, imagine all the kooky things Luffy's brain could come up with, molding shit out of rubber for him to use as weapons against his opponent. Luffy would come up with some really weird shit. I mean, he would make like a giant thing of meat and then coat it in arm hockey and just beat the shit out of somebody with that. And don't laugh, because that's something he would totally fucking think of. Yeah, so maybe it's something like that, like with Paramecias, maybe just coming up with another aspect of your fruit that you haven't tapped yet. And, maybe, I don't know. Or maybe they're all the same. Maybe, Doflamingo was able to manipulate turning the environment into string. Maybe that's what all Paramecias could do. Luffy turning the environment into rubber. Magellan turning the entire environment around him into, like, poison, maybe. And Galdino would turn everything into wax. I don't know. But that seems like that's something they could do anyway. Like, if Galdino wanted to, he could just output a tremendous amount of wax around him and then create his own wax environment if he wanted to. But not just creating the substance, actually turning a substance that's like already stone or metal into wax or into poison or something like that. That would be cool. But that's an idea I have for the Awakenings. The last thing I wanted to discuss is the difference of power scaling between the different Paramecia fruits. How, like, there's some fruits that are just naturally superior, even though their abilities are kind of similar. So in the Paramecia class, you have things like Mr. One's Suba no Mi, allowing him to turn his body into blades and, different kinds of, like, axes and swords and bladed weapons and stuff, which is pretty badass. But then we have Baby Five's ability, the Buki no Mi, that goes one step further. She can still turn her body into sickles and sword blades and stuff like that, but on top of that, she can also turn her body into guns, or flamethrowers, or fucking grenades, or explosives. She could do whatever the fuck she wants. She's Baby Five. She could turn any weapon, I guess, that was created, she could turn into. Could she turn into a nuke? Hydrogen bomb? Sure, why not? They just haven't been existed in the One Piece world. That's another thing too. Like, what happens if a new weapon is developed? Like, we developed this new bomb. Could Baby Five then turn into that newly developed weapon that didn't exist when she ate the fruit? I don't know. It's just weird things about devil fruits that I hope Vegapunk explains at some point. On top of that, we have Mrs. Valentine's, who was the eater of the kilo fruit, who can, change her body by increments of different kilos. So manipulating her body to get heavier and heavier, without actually not changing the physical form that she's in, However, the Mach Weiss ate the ton fruit, so instead of just changing his body by kilos, he changes it by fucking tons. So he's like a super weighted human. So it's the same basic ability, just on a much larger scale. I'm sure Mrs. Valentine's had like a limit, like that she could not make her body any heavier or any lighter than that certain limit, but Mach Weiss was able to push past that limit. So, there's stuff like that. So yeah, Paramecia fruits, guys, they are fucking crazy and wacky, and it seems like just whatever crazy idea Oda comes up with, he just like, you know what, this seems like a cool idea for a power. Oh well, Lodi had his own, just chuck it into Paramecia, that'll make sense. But they all seem to follow a basic idea, creating a substance, changing your body. There's a few that can manipulate the environment, and then the Awakenings that can apparently manipulate the environment. They're really cool. That's one of the reasons I keep on watching, I keep on reading One Piece, these crazy powers that Oda keeps coming up with. Especially like Big Mom's Soul fruit, like the way that fruit worked, and the intricacies of that. It's not your standard fare for manga and anime. It's not like a standard power that's like, oh, Big Mom's Soul fruit. Well, I've seen that before a shit ton of times in anime. It seems like something he was really coming up with. The Door fruit, that was kind of unique. Even Sugar's fruit, which had a bunch of different, like a smorgasbord of different abilities. It was still cool to see that kind of power. So what is your favorite Paramecia fruit that you would like to have in the One Piece story? Aside from the jacket fruit. I know everybody's clamoring for that one. And no clear fruit, you perverts, because I know everyone's gonna say that too. So yeah, have a good day, everybody. Tekking101 signing out. Have a good one.